In the quiet, climate-controlled, and heavily secured vaults of Yale University's Voynich Rare Book and Manuscript Library, under the watchful eye of scholars, librarians, and armed guards, lies a book. It is not a large or ostentatious book, about the size of a modern paperback, its pages made of fine, delicate, almost translucent calfskin vellum. It is bound in a soft, unmarked limp leather cover, a cover that is strangely devoid of any title, author's name, or identifying mark. To the casual observer, it might look like just another medieval manuscript, one of thousands of preserved relics from a bygone age, a relic of a world lit only by fire. But this book is different. This book is unique. It is arguably the single most mysterious and enigmatic book in the entire world. For over a century, since its rediscovery in 1912, this small, unassuming volume has tantalized, tormented, and utterly defeated some of the greatest minds in modern history. It has been studied by the world's best professional cryptographers, the same brilliant codebreakers who deciphered the secret military communications of the Axis powers during World War II, men who could unravel the most complex ciphers known to man. It has been pored over by teams of historians, by linguists specializing in lost languages, by botanists, by astronomers, by art historians, and by experts in medieval alchemy and medicine. And yet, to this day, it has refused to yield its secrets. Not a single verifiable word of it has ever been successfully and consensually translated. It remains a locked room mystery, but the locked room is a book, and the key has been lost to time. The book is filled from cover to cover with an elegant, flowing, and deeply perplexing script written in an alphabet that appears nowhere else on earth. Interspersed with this impenetrable text are hundreds of strange, beautiful, and often deeply bizarre hand-drawn illustrations. There are meticulously detailed drawings of plants that no botanist has ever been able to identify, their roots, leaves, and flowers unlike any known species. There are bizarre and complex astronomical and astrological charts of unknown constellations and celestial phenomena. And most famously and disturbingly, there are cryptic diagrams of small naked women, almost all with oddly rounded, pregnant-looking bellies, bathing and frolicking in a series of strange green interconnected pools and tubes that look like a cross between a plumbing system and a diagram of internal organs. It is a book that seems to describe a world that is not our own, a world governed by an alien logic, a forgotten science, and an unknown language. It is a profound intellectual puzzle, a challenge that has been called the Everest of cryptography. It is a story of Holy Roman emperors and English occultists, of Jesuit scholars and Polish revolutionaries, of brilliant codebreakers and frustrated academics. It is a journey into the heart of a profound medieval enigma. This is the story of the Voynich Manuscript. Tonight, we will metaphorically open the pages of this most mysterious of all mysterious books. We will embark on a deep and detailed investigation into its history, its contents, and its many secrets. We will trace its known provenance, from the opulent and occult-obsessed court of a Holy Roman emperor in 16th century Prague, to a dusty chest in a Jesuit college near Rome. We will take a guided tour through its strange and beautiful sections, examining the illustrations that have baffled botanists, astronomers, and historians for generations. We will delve into the bizarre, unreadable script that has been the graveyard of reputations for the science of cryptography. And finally, we will explore the many competing and often contradictory theories about what this strange book truly is. Is it a lost book of secret knowledge, a guide to forgotten herbal remedies, a work of profound alchemy, the last surviving text of a lost language and a lost people? Or is it something else entirely, the most elaborate, brilliant, and successful intellectual hoax ever perpetrated? Part 1. The provenance of a puzzle tracing the footsteps of a ghost. Like any good mystery, the story of the Voynich Manuscript begins not with the book itself, but with its modern discovery. Our journey starts in the year 1912, in the golden age of antiquarian book collecting. The man who would give the manuscript its name was a Polish-American rare book dealer and former revolutionary named Wilfred M. Voynich. Voynich was a fascinating, larger-than-life character in his own right, a man whose personal story was almost as intriguing as the book he would find. Born in Poland, he had become involved in revolutionary activities against the Tsarist regime, was arrested, and exiled to a brutal labor camp in Siberia. He eventually escaped, made his way to London, and reinvented himself as a highly respected, knowledgeable, and successful antiquarian book dealer. In the summer of 1912, Voynich was on a book-buying trip in Italy. He visited the Villa Mondragone, a grand and historic Jesuit college situated in the hills of Frascati, just outside of Rome. The Jesuits, in need of significant funds to renovate their college, had reluctantly agreed to allow Voynich to examine some of their old manuscripts from the library of the Collegio Romano, hoping he would purchase some of them. In a dusty, forgotten chest in a back room, Voynich found a collection of old books, and among them one stood out. It was the small, unassuming vellum codex that would come to dominate the rest of his life and secure his place in history. Voynich, an expert in medieval texts, was immediately captivated. He recognized that the script was unlike any he had ever seen, and the illustrations were bizarre and compelling. But what truly excited him, what made his heart race, was a letter tucked inside the book's front cover. This letter, written in Latin and dated August 19, 1666, was from a man named Johannes Marcus Marci, a prominent scientist, physician, and the rector of Prague University at the time. The letter was addressed to one of the most famous and brilliant scholars in all of Europe, a German Jesuit polymath living in Rome named Athanasius Kircher. Kircher was a legendary figure in the 17th century, a man sometimes called the last man who knew everything. He was a true Renaissance man, a brilliant but often eccentric scholar, a published expert in everything from geology and medicine to music theory, optics, and linguistics. He had famously, and entirely incorrectly, claimed to have deciphered Egyptian hieroglyphics, a feat that would not be accomplished for another 150 years. He was a man with a reputation for being able to solve any puzzle, decipher any code. He was exactly the kind of man you would send a mysterious, unreadable book to. In his letter to Kircher, Johannes Marcus Marci explains the book's known history, or at least the history as it was known to him. He writes that the book had once belonged to the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolph II, who reigned from 1576 to 1612. Rudolph II's court in Prague was a strange and wonderful place, a crucible of the late Renaissance, a center of both cutting-edge science and deeply esoteric occultism. Rudolph was a great patron of the arts and sciences. He patronized the brilliant astronomers Tycho Brahe and Johannes Kepler, who were revolutionizing humanity's understanding of the cosmos. But Rudolph was also a deeply melancholic and reclusive man, obsessed with alchemy, astrology, and mysticism. He collected strange and exotic objects, automata, and mysterious books. He surrounded himself not just with scientists, but also with alchemists, magicians, soothsayers, and charlatans from all over Europe. According to Marci's letter, Emperor Rudolph had purchased the mysterious manuscript for the then enormous sum of 600 gold ducats, a fortune that would be equivalent to tens, if not hundreds, of thousands of dollars today. Rudolph, Marci wrote, believed the book to be the work of the famous and near-mythical 13th century English friar, philosopher, and supposed magician Roger Bacon. Bacon, known as Dr. Mirabilis, was a true scientific pioneer, but he was also rumored to have dabbled in alchemy and the dark arts, and a legend had grown up around him as the author of secret books of knowledge. The man who was said to have sold the book to Emperor Rudolph was none other than John Dee, the famous English mathematician, astronomer, astrologer, and court occultist to Queen Elizabeth I. Dee was a brilliant but controversial figure who spent several years at Rudolph's court in Prague, attempting to communicate with angels through a practice he called scrying. Dee himself was a great book collector, and was also a great admirer of Roger Bacon. The connection seemed plausible. So this single folded letter provided a tantalizing, if incomplete, provenance for the strange book. It had supposedly passed from the hands of the legendary Roger Bacon in the 13th century to the enigmatic John Dee in the 16th century, who then sold it to the occult-obsessed Emperor Rudolf II in Prague. From Rudolf's vast collection, it somehow made its way into the possession of a man named Jacobus Horsicki de Tepanek, the head of Rudolf's botanical gardens. After Tepanek's death, Marcy's letter continues, the manuscript was acquired by an obscure alchemist in Prague named George Baresch. Baresch, it seems, was utterly obsessed with the book. He believed it held the key to some great alchemical or medical secret, but he was completely unable to decipher its strange script. Frustrated, Baresch learned of Athanasius Kircher's reputation as a master codebreaker in Rome. He sent a sample of the script to Kircher, begging for his help in translating it. Kircher, it seems, was unable to help. After Baresch's death, the manuscript passed to his friend Johannes Marcus Marcy, who then decided to send the entire book to Kircher, along with the letter that Voynich would find nearly 250 years later, hoping that the great Jesuit scholar could finally solve the puzzle. And then, after arriving in Rome and entering the possession of Athanasius Kircher and the Jesuits, the manuscript simply vanished. It disappeared from the historical record for over 200 years, presumably filed away and forgotten in the vast Jesuit archives of the Collegio Romano, until Wilfrid Voynich, by a stroke of luck, rediscovered it in that dusty chest in 1912. Wilfrid Voynich became completely and utterly obsessed with the manuscript. He believed it contained some profound secret, perhaps the lost scientific knowledge of Roger Bacon, and he was determined to be the one to unlock it and reveal it to the world. He made photostatic copies of the pages and sent them to experts all over the world, linguists, classicists, cryptographers, but no one could make any sense of it. For the rest of his life, until his death in 1930, Voynich tirelessly promoted the manuscript, lectured about it, and tried to get it deciphered, all without any success. After his death, the book passed to his wife Ethel Voynich, a famous novelist in her own right. After she died, it passed to her friend and companion, Anne Nil, who then sold it in 1961 to another rare book dealer named Hans P. Krauss. Krauss, like Voynich before him, was unable to find a buyer for the mysterious and unreadable book. Finally, in 1969, he donated it to Yale University, where it resides today in the Beinecke Library, officially catalogued as Beinecke MS 408. For decades, this historical narrative, based almost entirely on the Marcy letter, was all we had to go on. It was a fascinating story, full of famous names and intriguing possibilities, but it was unproven. But in 2009, modern science was finally able to shed some new definitive light on the book's origins. A team of researchers at the University of Arizona was given permission by Yale to take tiny, millimeter-sized samples from 4 different pages of the manuscript's vellum for radiocarbon dating. The results were stunning and completely upended the traditional story. The carbon dating showed, with 95% certainty, that the calfskin used to make the pages was prepared sometime between the years 1404 and 1438. This meant the book was at least 150 years older than Voynich and others had previously thought. It could not have been created in the 16th century as an elaborate hoax to fool Emperor Rudolf. It was a genuine, early 15th century artifact. This also meant that it could not have been written by Roger Bacon, as he had died in 1294. Later, in a separate study, researchers at the Macron Research Institute in Chicago analyzed the ink and paints used in the illustrations. They found that the materials used, iron gall ink and a simple palette of mineral-based paints, were entirely consistent with the materials and techniques used by scribes and artists during the early 15th century. They found no evidence of any modern pigments, dealing a serious blow to the theory that the book was a modern forgery. So, we now know with a high degree of scientific certainty, when the book was made, the first half of the 15th century. This was the era of the late Middle Ages, the time of Joan of Arc, the 100 Years' War, and the dawn of the Italian Renaissance. But this new, hard data only deepens the mystery. Who, in the early 1400s, created this bizarre and beautiful book? And why? To try and answer that, we must turn our attention away from its history and towards its strange and enigmatic contents. Part 2. A guided tour of the unknowable, the sections of the manuscript. The Voynich Manuscript, as it exists today, consists of about 240 vellum pages, though it is clear that some pages are missing. It is divided into 6 distinct sections, based on the general character of its illustrations. Each section seems to be dedicated to a different subject, but what those subjects are precisely is a matter of intense and ongoing debate. Let's take a guided tour through the strange and perplexing pages of this unsolved codex. The first, and by far the longest section of the manuscript, is traditionally known as the herbal section. This section comprises nearly half of the book. Each page of this section features a large, detailed, and beautifully colored drawing of a plant. But these are not the kind of scientifically precise botanical illustrations you would find in a typical medieval herbal. These are bizarre, fantastical, and often dreamlike creations. Some of the plants look like composites, with the roots of one known plant, the leaves of another, and the flowers of a third, all stitched together into a monstrous hybrid. Others seem to be complete fantasies, bearing no resemblance to any known species on Earth. They have strange, looping root systems, impossibly intricate leaves, and flowers that seem to defy the laws of botany. The drawings are colored with simple washes of green, brown, red, and blue paint. The style is somewhat crude and unscientific, lacking the precise detail of later botanical artists like Leonardo da Vinci or Albrecht Dürer. Alongside each of these fantastical plant illustrations is a block of the strange, unreadable Voynich script, presumably describing the plant's name, its properties, its uses, and where it can be found. Is this a forgotten pharmacopoeia, a guide to the lost herbal medicine of the 15th century, perhaps describing plants that are now extinct or were only known in a very specific remote region? Or is it a catalog of an alien ecosystem? A botanist's guide to a world that is not our own? The second section of the manuscript is the astronomical section. This section is filled with intricate circular diagrams and charts that look like astronomical or astrological drawings. There are drawings of the sun, the moon, and what appear to be stars or constellations. But again, these are not the familiar constellations of the Greco-Roman tradition that dominated medieval European astronomy. The zodiacal signs that are depicted, like a bull for Taurus or an archer for Sagittarius, are strange, and often have extra stars or are surrounded by mysterious groups of tiny, naked human figures. Some of the pages in this section are complex fold-outs, opening up into large, beautiful charts with concentric circles filled with symbols, stars, and figures. Their meaning is a complete mystery. Are these charts a lost system of astrology, a different way of reading the heavens? Are they a map of an unknown sky, as seen from a different part of the world, or perhaps from a different world altogether? Or are they something else, a symbolic or cosmological map, rather than a literal representation of the night sky? Next comes the balneological section, so named from the Latin word for bathing. This is perhaps the most bizarre, the most famous, and the most deeply perplexing section of the entire manuscript. The pages are filled with elaborate and intricate drawings of small naked women, usually depicted with rounded, pregnant-looking bellies and strange, elaborate hairstyles. They are shown bathing, wading, and frolicking in a series of strange interconnected pools, tubes, and channels. These structures are not simple bathtubs. They are complex, almost organic-looking systems, drawn with a level of detail that suggests they represent something specific. The water, or liquid, in these pools and tubes is usually colored a vibrant green or blue. The women are shown interacting with this system in various ways, sliding down chutes, holding strange, flower-like objects, sitting under fountains, and sometimes even wearing crowns. What on earth is this section depicting? It is so strange that it has no clear parallel in any other known medieval manuscript. Is it a manual of alchemy, with the women representing some kind of symbolic process of transformation or distillation? Is it a guide to women's health, gynecology, and midwifery from a lost medical tradition? Or is it something else entirely? A depiction of a religious ritual, a mythological story, or a social practice whose meaning is completely and utterly lost to us? The fourth section of the book is often called the cosmological section. This section is another series of strange circular diagrams, but these are even more abstract and mysterious than the astronomical charts. They have been nicknamed rosettes by researchers because of their complex, flower-like or wheel-like shapes. Many of these pages are also complex fold-outs, opening up into large multi-page diagrams that seem to depict geographical or cosmological maps of some kind. They are filled with mysterious islands, castles, volcanoes, and strange cellular structures, all connected by a network of causeways and pathways. Their meaning is completely opaque. They are some of the most beautiful and most baffling pages in the entire book. The fifth section is the pharmaceutical section. This section is visually similar to the herbal section, but instead of full drawings of plants, it features detailed drawings of individual plant parts, leaves, roots, seeds, and seed pods. These plant parts are placed next to what appear to be beautifully decorated apothecary jars or containers, of the kind a medieval pharmacist would use. Each of these entries is accompanied by a short paragraph of the Voynich script. This section seems to be a list of ingredients or a set of recipes for creating herbal remedies and potions, perhaps the practical application of the knowledge contained in the book's first herbal section. Finally, the manuscript ends with a long section known as the recipes or stars section. This section is visually very different from the rest of the book. It consists almost entirely of solid blocks of text, with no large illustrations. The text is broken up into hundreds of short paragraphs, each one marked in the left margin by a small, star-like or flower-like symbol, which has led to the section's nickname. This section is thought by many researchers to be a key, an index, or a glossary to the rest of the book, but without being able to read a single word of the text, its true function remains a complete mystery. And then there is the text itself, the Voynich script. The script is the heart of the enigma, the central challenge of the Voynich Manuscript. It is composed of a unique alphabet of about 25 to 30 distinct characters, or glyphs, depending on how one counts the variations. Some of these glyphs resemble familiar Latin letters or Roman numerals, while others, like the recurring gallows characters, are completely unique and have no known parallel in any other writing system. The script is written from left to right, in a smooth, elegant, and unhesitating hand. This is a crucial point. It suggests that the author or scribe was fluent in this language and this script. It does not look like someone who was laboriously encrypting a known text letter by letter. It looks like someone writing down their thoughts as they occurred to them. The text is divided into what appear to be words of varying lengths, separated by narrow spaces. And these words seem to follow consistent spelling and grammatical rules. This is what makes the manuscript so maddeningly difficult to decipher, and what has led so many experts to believe it must be a real language. It has all the statistical properties of a real natural language. The frequency of the different letters, the way certain characters tend to appear at the beginning or end of words, the repetition of certain common words, all of these things are consistent with known languages like English or Latin. It adheres to what is known as Zipf's law, a statistical distribution that is a hallmark of natural languages. This complex, language-like structure is why most experts have concluded that the text is not a simple substitution cipher, where one symbol simply replaces one letter of a known alphabet. If it were that simple, it would have been cracked long ago by modern computers. The world's best codebreakers have thrown themselves at this problem, and have been utterly and completely defeated. William F. Friedman, the brilliant American cryptographer who led the team that broke Japan's purple code during World War II, a man considered the father of modern American cryptography, spent years studying the manuscript in his retirement. He and his team of experts at the NSA subjected it to every known technique of cryptography. They analyzed letter frequencies, word patterns, and every other statistical property they could think of. They failed completely. Friedman eventually came to the frustrated conclusion that the Voynich script was likely an early attempt at creating a constructed, artificial language, like the philosophical languages proposed by scholars like John Wilkins in the 17th century, or like the more modern Esperanto. He believed that the text was written in an a priori language, a language built from scratch, with its own unique vocabulary and grammar, not based on any existing language. And without a key, a glossary or a Rosetta Stone to translate it, he concluded that it was likely undecipherable. His final frustrated verdict was that the manuscript was an early attempt to construct an artificial or universal language of the a priori type, and that it was a unique and brilliant, but ultimately unsolvable, puzzle. So we are left with a profound and multifaceted mystery. We have a book, made in the early 15th century, written in an unknown script that follows the complex statistical patterns of a real language, and illustrated with hundreds of beautiful, colorful, and deeply bizarre pictures of things that do not seem to exist in our world. What could it possibly be? This question has led to a fascinating, and often wild proliferation of theories. Part 3. The proliferation of theories, a lost world, an alien message, or a grand and glorious hoax. The theories about the origin and meaning of the Voynich manuscript are as numerous and as strange as the illustrations within its pages. They can be broadly divided into three categories: those that believe it is a genuine, meaningful text written in a real but unknown language or a complex code; those that believe it is a complete and meaningless fabrication, a brilliant and elaborate hoax; and those that fall somewhere in between or in the realm of the truly exotic. Let's start with the most romantic and compelling set of theories: that the manuscript is a genuine, meaningful text that we simply cannot yet understand. This is the camp where most serious academic researchers have traditionally placed themselves. One popular theory in this camp is that the manuscript is written in a lost or previously unknown natural language. The creator or creators of the manuscript might have been the last speakers of a dying tongue, and this book was their desperate attempt to preserve their people's entire body of knowledge, their medicine, their astronomy, their cosmology, their history. The strange plants and astronomical charts might reflect the unique environment and cosmology of this lost culture. This theory is appealing, but it begs the question: what language could it be, and why is there no other surviving trace of it? A related, and perhaps more plausible, theory is that the text is not a lost language, but a known language that has been deliberately and cleverly obscured using a complex cipher. The science of cryptography was in its infancy in the early 15th century, but it was not unknown. Alchemists, heretics, spies, and even lovers used ciphers to protect their secrets from prying eyes. Perhaps the author of the Voynich manuscript was one of these, a person with dangerous knowledge to protect. If it is a cipher, it would have to be incredibly sophisticated to have resisted all modern attempts at computer-aided analysis. It is certainly not a simple substitution cipher. Some have proposed it could be a polyalphabetic cipher, like the Vigenère cipher, where each symbol can represent multiple different letters depending on a keyword. Others have suggested it might use a Cardan grill, a system where a special overlay with holes cut in it is needed to reveal the true message hidden within a larger body of text. The problem with these theories is that the underlying text, when these methods are applied, still doesn't resolve into any known language. Another intriguing possibility that falls within the real language camp is that the manuscript is an example of glossolalia, or speaking in tongues. This theory suggests that the author might have been a religious mystic or a visionary, perhaps a woman like Hildegard von Bingen, who claimed to receive divine revelations. The author could have been transcribing a divine language that was revealed to them in a trance state. This would explain the fluent, unhesitating, and language-like structure of the text, as well as the bizarre, otherworldly nature of the illustrations. The book, in this view, is a direct transmission from another plane of existence, a personal and deeply spiritual work that was never intended to be read or understood by others in a conventional sense. In recent years, with the rise of artificial intelligence and machine learning, there have been several new and highly publicized attempts to crack the code. In 2018, a team of Canadian computer scientists from the University of Alberta used a powerful AI algorithm to analyze the text. Their algorithm, which had been trained on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights translated into 380 different languages, suggested that the language of the manuscript was likely an ancestral form of Hebrew. It also concluded that the text had been enciphered using a complex anagram system, where the letters of each word were scrambled according to a set pattern. They even produced a tentative translation of the first sentence. She made recommendations to the priest, man of the house, and me and people. However, this finding has been heavily disputed by other scholars and linguists, who point out that the results are vague, ungrammatical, and likely the product of the AI simply finding patterns where none exist, a form of computational pareidolia. Now let's turn to the other side of the debate, a theory that is equally compelling and for some more intellectually satisfying. The theory that the Voynich Manuscript is nothing more than an elaborate, beautiful, and brilliant hoax. The proponents of the hoax theory argue that the very fact that the manuscript has resisted all attempts at decipherment for over a century is the strongest evidence that there is nothing to decipher. They believe that the text is meaningless gibberish, cleverly and painstakingly constructed to look like a real language. The strange illustrations in this view are not a window into a lost world of knowledge, but are simply fantastical creations designed to make the book look more mysterious and therefore more valuable. If it is a hoax, who could have created it? And why? One of the earliest and most enduring hoax theories points the finger back to the book's early, and now largely debunked, provenance. Perhaps the manuscript was created in the late 16th century, specifically to be sold to the credulous and occult-obsessed Emperor Rudolph II. The seller, who according to the Marcy letter may have been the English occultist John Dee or his shady partner, the alchemist Edward Kelly, might have fabricated the entire book. They would have known that the emperor would pay a huge sum for a mysterious book supposedly written by the legendary Roger Bacon. In this scenario, the carbon dating of the vellum to the 15th century is explained by the hoaxer simply using old, blank parchment to make his creation look more authentic, a common and well-documented practice among forgers of the period. The problem with this theory, of course, is that the ink and paints also appear to be from the 15th century. Another, more recent, and very compelling hoax theory points the finger at the modern discoverer of the manuscript, Wilfrid Voynich himself. This theory suggests that Voynich, a brilliant and somewhat roguish book dealer with a revolutionary past, might have fabricated the manuscript himself in the early 20th century. He was an expert in old books and manuscripts, and he certainly had the knowledge and the means to create a convincing forgery using old materials. His motive would have been simple: to create a priceless and mysterious artifact that would make his name and his fortune. The discovery of the Marcy letter inside the book could have been part of the ruse, a clever way to give the book a fascinating and valuable history. However, most experts now dismiss the Voynich as forger theory, pointing to the deep and complex linguistic patterns in the text that seem too sophisticated for a single individual, even a brilliant one, to have created without the aid of modern computers. The hoax theory is compelling because it provides a simple, rational explanation for the manuscript's enduring mystery. But it also has its problems. If the text is just gibberish, why is it so statistically complex? Why does it so perfectly mimic the structural rules of a real language like Zipf's law? Creating such a convincing fake would be an intellectual feat, almost as impressive as creating a real coded message. As the famous physicist and brilliant amateur codebreaker Richard Feynman once said after examining the manuscript, "It's not a hoax. The structure is too complex." Finally, we have the more exotic and speculative theories, the ones that venture into the realm of science fiction, the paranormal, and the truly strange. Some have suggested, usually on the fringes of the debate, that the manuscript is not of human origin at all. The strange, unidentifiable plants, the unknown constellations, the bizarre biology depicted in the balneological section, all of this, they argue, points to an extraterrestrial origin. Perhaps the manuscript is a kind of alien encyclopedia, a fragment of a galactic database, left behind or discovered long ago. This theory is, of course, impossible to prove and lies outside the realm of conventional scholarship, but it speaks to the profound sense of otherworldliness that the manuscript evokes in anyone who spends time with it. Part 4. The enduring enigma and the search for meaning. So, after more than a century of intense study by some of the world's brightest minds, where do we stand? The Voynich Manuscript remains what it has always been. A profound and deeply humbling enigma. It is a mirror that reflects the limits of our own knowledge and the biases of our own disciplines. Every expert who has approached it has seen something different, a reflection of their own field of expertise. The cryptographers see a complex cipher. The linguists see a lost language. The botanists see a fantasy pharmacopoeia. The historians see a clever hoax. The computer scientists see a complex algorithm. The mystics see a divine revelation. The manuscript sits at the perfect, maddening intersection of the meaningful and the meaningless. It is too structured, too complex, too ordered to be random gibberish. Yet it is too strange, too alien, too resistant to interpretation to be easily understood. It is a monument to the idea that there are still profound mysteries left in the world, corners of our own history that are still dark and unexplored, even in our age of big data and artificial intelligence. In a way, the true value of the Voynich Manuscript may not lie in the secrets it contains, but in the questions it forces us to ask. It challenges our assumptions about language, about knowledge, and about the nature of the past. It reminds us that the world of our ancestors, the world of the early 15th century, was not always a simple or a rational place. It was a world where science and magic, faith and reason, observation and fantasy, were deeply and inextricably intertwined. The manuscript is a product of that world, a world we can study and analyze, but perhaps never fully and truly comprehend. It is an intellectual Everest, and it remains for now unconquered. The book lies open in its climate-controlled glass case at Yale, its elegant alien script still waiting, after 600 years, for the one person, the one mind, the one breakthrough that will finally unlock its secrets and allow it to speak its truth, whatever that truth may be. And now, I want to turn this historical and cryptographic puzzle over to you. What is your theory? After hearing the evidence, the history, the illustrations, and the myriad of competing ideas, do you believe the Voynich Manuscript is a genuine text waiting to be deciphered? Do you lean towards the theory of an elaborate and brilliant hoax? Or do you entertain a more exotic explanation? What do you see when you look at its strange and beautiful pages? What does your intuition tell you? Let us know your thoughts, your theories, and your own analysis in the comments below. This is one mystery where every voice and every new idea is welcome. And who knows, perhaps the key lies not in a complex algorithm, but in a flash of human insight. If you found this journey into the world's most mysterious book to be as fascinating and as perplexing as we did, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. By hitting that notification bell, you'll join us for our next exploration of the unsolved codexes, the historical enigmas, and the mysterious books that continue to challenge and inspire us. Thank you for listening.